reality. And I think one of the things that was really helpful was I set very early on an advisory board. So I created an advisory board, so people who had skill sets beyond mine, so people who were entrepreneurial, people who had, I feel like I have a lot of hustle, I have a lot of drive, I have a lot of instinct, but I have an undergraduate degree in English and a master's in acting. So I didn't study business. I didn't have a background in business. I didn't have anything like that. So I didn't know how to sell. I didn't know how to, I knew how to deliver my content because I taught for 2 years, and I also had the practice, an instinct also in how do I create an experience and how do I ensure that people get value. But it's a lot of, experimenting, trying it on and seeing what works and trying things on. And I think because I'm an actor and I have a background in theater, there's a certain nature of it that's a little improvisational. So I don't mind being thrown into the deep end and swimming a little bit. So that piece of it really works. It's specifically in the entrepreneurial landscape. Now, some people are super hyper planners. They want to have a business plan and they want to, they want to craft the perfect website and they want to get their business cards done and their logo and all of that other stuff. I would say that my business was a little more organic. And part of that is because I was an actor, right? So I had a parallel career that was the attention. So there was a way in which it was kind of incubating for a while before 2015, where I set up the more formal launch. And there were certain things that I found were really helpful. One, there's an amazing organization called BNI, which is called Business Networking International. So I learned how to network, and I learned how to network in a model that is all about generosity. So it's about givers gain. So I was like, wait a second, that's really powerful. That if I can, and I would also say that I'm a super connector. So I'm always thinking creatively about how I can show up in service of somebody else. So when someone, so having a network of people who I can refer people to, I think that is like, I'm a problem solver. I can help people have, oh, do you know somebody who does this? Absolutely, I do. So then you become top of mind for people in the landscape around what it is that you do. And then also, slowly but surely, and it was a little difficult at first. Like, there was a period of time there was not a lot of money coming in, and it was really scary. And I continued to trust my gut, and I had people around me, going back to the advisory board, who had a higher listening of me. And what I mean by that is people who are your champions. Because what happens is ultimately what you're dealing with is yourself as an entrepreneur, specifically when you're starting. I mean, you may have a business partner, you may have somebody else, but ultimately you're dealing with yourself and your insecurities and I'm not good enough and no one cares and no one's, so there's a lot of time that you're spending alone kind of figuring it all out. And, having people that you can go to who are your champions, who say, stick with it, you're really great. I have someone to refer you to. And I would say also lean into the opportunities that emerge. Trust the opportunities that present themselves to you and lean into those opportunities because they will teach you something. And I think that for me, I said yes a lot. I said yes to every opportunity that presented itself. There were a lot of things that I did for free or for very little money, and those things ended up generating a lot of money. Right? So it's like looking at the opportunities, trusting the opportunities to present themselves. And again, the service that you provide is not about you. It is about your audience. It is about the people that you are serving. So trust the listening of what they're communicating. What do they want? Right? Nobody wants to be forced anything, right? So trust that if people are saying this is what they want, and those are people who you want to do business with, those are people who you want to support, those are people whose pains you want to help and assist, then trust what they're communicating and pivot, dance. Dancing is a give and a take. There's leading and there's following, and that's both people showing up equally strong. As someone who dances, I'm Cuban, I dance Latin music. Like the last thing you want as someone who's leading is a follower who's not equally greeting you with the same level of pressure and intensity, right? It's a dance. And I think that you want to always be listening to your customers. You want to be listening to the people who you want to serve. And I would say trust the opportunities that emerge. That's reality. Instagram is not a reality. Facebook is not a reality. People calling up and saying, I need your help. That sounds amazing. I'm going to say yes. Trust that.
Great. So let's talk about a little bit about that, because your clients have been industry leaders, CEOs, founders, presidential candidates, UN diplomats. How do you, and from the beginning until now, expanded to attract the type of clients that you wanted, and how has that process evolved?
That's a beautiful question. I think the two things that emerge, one is integrity and two is consistency. So I think that there are people that I know who are entrepreneurial, right? Who it feels like they have the attention span of a dog. It's like squirrel, 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 you know. And what happens is it gets a little confusing, right? Because you're like, wait a second, what are you doing now, right? Because it constantly changes, right? And I think I found a lane that is actually, and I'm like choking up as I'm thinking about it, like is actually really the full self-expression of my gift on the planet, which is that I am a champion for human beings who are committed to make a difference and elevating how they show up to communicate, not in their own self-interest, but ultimately of service to humanity. And part of that is just I have an innate curiosity, and I love to learn, and I love people. And I think that has been consistent. So there's an integrity in what I say and how I show up in the world. That doesn't mean that I'm perfect. Like, I have my flaws. You know, sometimes I mess up, and I own when I mess up, right? I think that, there's no shame in acknowledging and being responsible and being accountable and being transparent, right? And with a commitment to do the best that I can. And I'll share with you, one of my global commitments is working with women. And I say that as a Kinsey 6 homosexual, and I find that I'm not a woman. I don't identify as a woman. Women feel unbelievably safe in my presence. And they did as a photographer. They do as an entrepreneur, because oftentimes there are in male-dominated spaces, and they want some support in showing up powerful. And they call me the secret weapon, because I'm able to distill the insecurity and have them show up empowered and as their best advocate in communication, right? Now, one of the global programs that we do is called the Fearless Force Public Speaking for Visionary Women Leaders, which we've done 19 times in New York and San Francisco and Tel Aviv and 3 cities in Australia. Our commitment is to do it in 24 cities all over the world by 2024. And COVID happened, right? And I was supposed to do a program in Australia in March. And I had clients who'd registered into that program. And, the first thing we did is I called the women who registered, and I said, look, I was at that point in San Francisco doing one of the programs. They stopped in the middle of the program. And I said, we have to cancel the trip. We have to postpone the program. I don't know when I'm going to get there, but the world is shutting down, and there's no way that I'm going to get to Australia in the next 2 weeks. This was in March. Yeah. Right? And what happened is I had a conversation with the clients, and I said, we are committed to continuing to show up in service of you and your work. Now, these are people who've paid, considerable money for a program. And, I offered one-on-one time with me for free. And two, we have a new program that we're generating, and there's a pilot program that we're running. So we gifted them spots in the program in alignment with a program that they've invested in, that who knows when we're going to have the opportunity to generate that program. And this woman said, when COVID happened, I sat back and I listened because I wanted to see what are they going to do about it. And she said, what I expect from my teachers, from my coaches, is integrity. And what you guys have demonstrated is 100% integrity. And that was really powerful. And I think that showing up consistently in that way is what has people trust you. And when they start to trust you is when they start referring you to those people. I would also say that, part of the benefit of being in New York City is that I'm at an epicenter of, there's a lot of traffic that comes from New York City. And because of that, and also a diverse experience that I have, when I went to, I don't purely come from the theater, but I come from a liberal arts background, right? One of the top schools in the country. So I have a diverse landscape of friends of mine and colleagues who have had different professions and different careers. And they've introduced me to their networks, so they brought me into their companies. So part of it is really tapping into personal relationships and having people generate introductions and not being afraid to ask for support and for help. So I think consistency and integrity, I didn't start off with those clients, and slowly but surely, that's what emerged.
Yeah. Oh, great. So you've mentioned a little bit about how kind of COVID threw a wrench in everything. As the world is evolving and your company is evolving, what things are you learning that you were forced to because of COVID, and what are some of those new additions, let's say, if you have some, that will happen in 2021 whenever the world goes back to normal, that you're going to take from this time where everything shut down?
Well, I would say several things. One, and I want to be responsible for using this word because it's the word that's emerging right now, and there's a lot of horror with COVID, right? And there is one beauty about it, which is that it impacted everybody, right? So it was a great equalizer that no matter where you are in the world, this impacted you. And I think that that we can all remember where we were in March when the world stopped. Right? I was somebody who was displaced from my home in New York City for over 5.5 months. I was traveling for business. I was in San Francisco, chose not to return home to New York City because the situation in New York City was diminishing. And it was getting bad really, really fast. Ended up in Colorado for about a week and a half, and then had an opportunity to go to Miami, Florida, which is where I was born and raised. My parents were also displaced. My parents are still displaced. And I was able to stay in their apartment in Miami for that time. So the first thing that I think it really caused us to do is, one, really be responsive to our audience and to listen. And I think that a lot of companies that I saw jumped into survival, and they jumped into survival to sell. And it felt out of tone. It felt dissonant with the moment. And I think what we did is we just really stopped and we really listened and we held space for our community. And said, we are going to hold space and we're going to serve you and we're going to actually amplify you. So we pivoted and we created this thing called Fearless Chat. So every Thursday now at 5 p.m., we showcase one of our thought leaders. It's something I'd always wanted to do, but we didn't have the time or the space or the bandwidth to do that. So now we've done 30. We have today will be the 37th time that we're gathering in conversation around emerging conversations that are relevant to the moment. And our community, our audience, my clients were so grateful for a space for them to try things out and experiment and explore. So that was something that was really powerful. And, there were several parts of my business that were not impacted by COVID. So because you know, as a public speaking coach,